let's start with, tell me a little bit about yourself. Why did you become an Elks member? There was a lot of choices with, I would assume, the Masons or the Eagles or the Lions Club. I mean, there was a lot of choices there. What made you want to get into the crazy world of the Elks?
Well, I came in, I wandered in one Tuesday night. There was an Elks Lodge about 5 minutes away from where I lived at the time. And my dad had been an Elk. He was a social member. He wasn't an officer or anything like that. But growing up, I would hear little references to the Elks every now and then. And I remember going down to the swimming pool. So at any rate, I moved into this part of town where willy-nilly there was an Elks Lodge real close. So one night after work, I stopped by and just to find out, what I would have to do just to check them out. And, at that time, the Elks weren't really blowing their own horn when it came to the good works they did. And so I go in there, I'm learning all about the state major project and, the national projects, the people, they had a greeter at the time at the front door, which is I don't know what would have happened that night if they hadn't had a greeter there, to be honest with you. I may have just kind of looked around and walked out. I don't know. But anyway, he engaged in me, showed me around, taught me a little bit about the Elks, and introduced me to some people. It just so happened I was lucky that night where they had an open meeting where they had a presentation about guide dogs for the blind. I still remember that. And I was like, okay, well, this is cool. This is a place I can get a drink after work. And they're doing work for the community. And by that time I was like 32. So I was kind of getting interested in that kind of thing. And so I signed up, got my buddy to sign up with me. And his dad had been a Mason. And we started going to the lodge meetings. They liked that. They made my buddy an esquire fairly quickly in, and then come the next nomination round, I got nominated for lecturing night, and 2 years later I was ER. So it was a chance for me to. It was just I was just drawn to it. I couldn't tell you why, really.
Well, no, I mean that's a great answer. I think the question is that when you first came to the Elks, did you come for the reason of because it was a charitable organization, or did you become because you thought it'd be cool with you and your buddy? I would assume at the age of 32. Did you come with because me and my buddies can hang out and this is a cool place to hang out for a bit or whatever? And then at that point, then you thought, oh, it's much more than that.
Yeah, it was. I think I joined really because they were doing stuff for the community, and to be honest, they had a bar, so it was close to home. It was a safe place. I will say most of the people at that time were twice my age, and it kind of reminded me of my mom and my aunts and the uncles, so it wasn't a place I was going to hang out at every night. But it was definitely added to the one of the stops, and then as I got involved and they asked us to start doing Easter egg hunts and things of that nature on committees, then you get to invest your time and you make friends. Yeah.
Well, that brings me to my second question, which is that how did you go from just John the member to just comes down and gives his time and thought it was kind of a cool place to hang out and, like you said, have a drink? How did you go from that to, hey, maybe the chairs are something that I'm interested in? I mean, did you ask about it, or did you say, hey, listen, how do these chairs work or whatever else? Or did somebody actually approach you and come up to you and go, hey, John, we kind of see something in you and maybe this might be something you're interested in?
Yeah, no, they approached me. We were younger members. We were going to the lodge meetings anyway. And at that point, my friend Jay and I, we just wanted to help the lodge. And so that's why we became officers. And they were, like you say, if you don't have officers, the lodge closes. And we had a lot of PERs in the chairs at that time. And so if they could get some new blood in there. And of course I said, well, I'll give it a try. I'm not promising anything. And here I am.
So what you're saying is you jumped in with both feet.
Yeah. I said, I'll give it a try. I'll only give it like 20, 22 years. And then after that, we'll see what's going on. Yeah.
That's hilarious. So you're chatting about your friend Jay. Is Jay still part of the lodge too?
He's an elk. He started raising a family, and to be an officer, it does take a little more time. And he just felt like he didn't want to do it, pardon the expression, half-assed. And so he was like, I'll be around to help out on committees. And so in that regard, he, family first. So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's surprising at the age of 32 that you thought, yeah, this would be a thing. Now, were you married at that time or had a girlfriend or how did that?
I had a girlfriend. I'm still not married. I'm engaged now. Yeah. So at the time, I wasn't in a major relationship, and maybe I was kind of subconsciously looking for something to fill the time, and I sure found it.
Absolutely. So because you did, well, you've been a DDGER at this point, right?
Yeah. Let's see. I joined in 98 and was ER in like 2001, and then went on to DD like 3 years later, I think.
Wow. So you really jumped up through the hoops.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, what do they say in my lodge? You drank the Kool-Aid, didn't you, John?
I did. Yeah. It was, Irish Kool-Aid, but it was. Yeah.
So I guess then, of course, the next question is that do you find, because you did drink the Kool-Aid, go up into the officer corps and even further to the district? Do you get noticed around town? Are you recognized? Do you find yourself, it's kind of a more prominent position that you expected?
Yeah, because we did. It's certainly not to the point where I have to go out with sunglasses and a hat on or anything like that. But from time to time, mainly because of the youth stuff that we do, like the hoop shoots and the scholarships, the parents will come up, and certainly if we cross paths in the aisle at the grocery store, we always say hi, how you doing? And because they remember that, they remember the day that, the hoop shoot day, or that the daughter got the scholarship, and came down to give a talk, so.
Absolutely. Of course, that brings me on to my next question, which is that thinking back to the chairs, or thinking back to the time that you were first becoming an officer, what's something that you're very proud of? What can you say? Just give me one. I'm sure you're proud of many things. Just give me one that you can say, well, I was a loyal knight, or I was a leading knight, or even a lecturing knight. I did something that I'm like, wow, that's a little off the cuff. Maybe somebody else in the lodge had never done it before, and something that's kind of memorable.
Yeah. Well, I was leading knight, and we had some lodge politics going on prior to the election, and they said, hey, why don't, we want you to be exalted ruler this year. And I said, no.
Lodge politics? I've never heard of such a thing.
I know. Exactly. And so and I said, no, the person that was running, I didn't have a problem with them. And I was, no, they've earned it. I'm not running against them and all that. Well, it turns out the person that got elected had some things going on, not necessarily their fault. They could not do exalted ruler. And so 30 days went by, and they were like, hey, John, we really need you to step up to ER. Otherwise we will close. lot of the other PERs had already done it multiple, 2 times. I think we had one that had done it 3 times maybe, but definitely we had quite a few that had done it twice. And so I couldn't shoot the dog in the back of the head, and I was just like, yeah, well, of course I'll step up. And so I'm proud of myself, because I could have just been, well, I'm just doing this because I have to, and if it wasn't for me. But I really did, you talked about diving in feet first, and all. I really made a commitment. And back then, the ritual every lodge was expected to go to ritual contests. It's not really like that now. And I had like 3 weeks, and back then we did it in May, so I had something like 3 weeks to learn the exalted ruler part by memory. And
now
I did.
Hold on, that's a good question, because I was talking with another gentleman the other day, and we were talking about, my lodge requires you to memorize the ritual.
Mm-hmm.
But he was saying that there are other lodges that don't. And
Mm-hmm.
and one of the biggest kind of things that has come up with us trying to get officers in the chairs was the ritual. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say that's kind of a stopping point for them. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're willing to figure out lodge politics. Yes, they're willing to make sure that everything gets paid, and and do the ER role. Or the officer role. But one of the biggest things is that they're like, oh man, I can't do that ritual. I can't memorize that ritual. It's just, I'm not that type of person. I'm not that type of guy or gal. That's just a killer for me.
Mm-hmm.
So in your lodge, in my lodge, it's required to memorize. Is that the same in yours?
Not anymore, but it used to be. And I know what they're saying. I mean, it's, forget about memorizing, just public speaking for most people is like a terrifying experience, and I think some people would rather choose to try, parachuting than public speaking. And but that's something
diving off the edge of a cliff at that point,
yeah,
right?
The ritual committee is going to have to figure that out. But back then, yeah, it was expected. And you would be removed from office if you didn't learn it and all that. And I just kind of looked at it like it was a challenge. I knew I had the support of the members that were involved in the lodge, as far as doing all the politics and appointing committees and all of that kind of thing. But I was also just going to show them, hey, I'm going to learn this ER part in 30 days. And I did. And Good. We did initiation. I did it from memory. But and so I am proud that I didn't. And they were all saying, "Hey, don't sweat it, John. You this is, you got the rug pulled out from under you. Don't worry about it." And I chose not to take the easy way out. So I am proud about that.
No, absolutely. That's very good. That's fantastic. The next question I have is that you were talking about, not just staying in the chairs of your lodge, but going up to district level. When you go to other lodges not only in your district, but outside of your district, do you feel welcomed? I mean, as an officer, do you have more of a kind of a welcome feeling more than an average member? Or are you kind of just like, well, it's the same no matter where you go?
Well, I'm not really hung up on titles. I don't think that, when I was district deputy or president, I never thought of myself as above anybody. And I certainly don't think anyone's above me either. And so I just kind of, look people in the eye and be friendly, and I take what I do seriously, but I don't take myself seriously, sometimes to a fault. Yeah, that's just how, so to answer your question, every now and then when I go to a lodge, I'll, you hear a little, oh yeah, that guy's this, but most of the time it's like, that's John. And yeah, he's one of the good guys. And so it's been good. I've got friends all over the Northwest. you know.
And so have you been able to go to lodges outside of Washington State?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I go down, I'm actually was raised in Oregon. So I'll go down and visit the lodges down there. And I know some of the guys, especially in the Portland area. And, you know, so we see each other and, you know, we're friends, you know, and sit down, have a drink or whatever. And it's expanded. I've just made a lot of friends, you know, and
Nice.
it adds to my travels too, because it's fun to go check out Elks Lodges.
Well, it is. And I found, at least in our area here in Northern California, one of the fun things to do is go to travel, see other lodges. Under this COVID-19 lockdown, of course, it's
different.
It's a whole new normal, as they say, right? And we got to go to the Sacramento Lodge. Really nice lodge. They had an amazing amount of amenities with a hot tub, and they had an indoor pool and squash courts and racquetball courts and the whole thing. We're a very small lodge here in Fremont, and we don't have the amenities like a golf course or bowling alley or some of like the other bigger lodges around us. But I do find it fun to go, and it was very nice because I was a lecturing night last year. And they the ER greeted me and gave me a pin for his year and stuff like that. So that was cool. That was fun.
Yeah, it
we
is.
Had a good time.
Yeah.
And so, what's one of your favorite lodges that you've been to up in the Northwest?
Well, let's see. In the state of Washington, I've got two lodges that I really admire. One is Ballard because of just how far they've come. I was going there, and you could roll a bowling ball down the bar, you know, through the whole building, and you wouldn't hit anybody. And now they've got almost 2,000 members. You know, the other one I like a lot is Forks, which is way out. I think it might be at the westernmost or the most western part of the lower 48. It's right out there in the Olympic Peninsula. They were another lodge that was kind of touch and go whether or not they were going to be able to keep their charter years ago, and they rallied, and they do everything all volunteer. They no paid employees. You go in there, you feel welcome. When they go to convention, they bring you know, the most people. They really got it going on there, so I like that one. Another one I liked out of state was Hood River, which is right across the Columbia River, I believe, from one of our Washington lodges, White Salmon. But Hood River is in an old building. They kept it up. It's all vintage. It's very cool. And then Port Angeles is like going back in time when you go into their lodge hall. It's all very Gothic, and I think it's like this from 1910. You know, so
wow,
and it's clean. They've kept it up. They've respected it. It's very cool. So
very nice, very nice. Well, Hood River, I believe I had another interview about a week ago. Another person said the same thing, which was Hood River was on the top of their wish list too, to go visit and go have a good time with. So cool. So getting back to the officer portion of this, we've talked about some good things, talked about some great things, but I got to ask you the tough questions. You know, I want a situation. You know, what was a really tough situation that you had to go through with while being in the chairs, but you still tried to remain positive?
I mean, I've been doing this for like 20 years. So some years are good and some years aren't so good. And so on the years that aren't so good, just trying to inspire them. If you try to do it verbally, you can come off as preachy. If you just try to lead by example, sometimes they're not paying attention. But you just have to stay positive and just kind of chalk it up to, you know, sometimes they do. What's that old commercial that Orson Welles did? We won't sell the wine before it's time. Well, sometimes you have to sell the wine before it's time, I guess. But you have to stay, at least you can't go negative. You know, sometimes If you don't have anything good to say, then just don't say it, but don't go negative, because that is it's like enthusiasm. That's contagious too.
Gotcha. No, that's good. That's great advice. That's great advice. So I know you talked about your buddy Jay back at the beginning of this conversation. How have you found that? Do you still have good friendships and good relationships with the people that you ran in the chairs with from the beginning? And I'm going to throw another question at you. As you went up through the district, do you find that the friendships are just as strong, even though they're not in your lodge, or you may have people from other lodges that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the great things about getting involved and being more than just a social member, because they are reunions when you see them. And boy, it's just like, well, how long have we known each other now? 15 years. And it's like, it sounds corny, but you just pick right back up where you left off. You may not have seen this person for 6 months, because they live on the other side of the state. Or in Seattle, it might take 6 months to drive, 10 miles, and so you don't see them as often as you'd like, but you just pick things right back up. And it's, I can't imagine me not going to a convention. I just really like, and it's the same thing when you see someone that you were in the chairs with in the lodge. Some of them aren't as in touch with the lodge as say I am, but when they do come in, they, maybe for a Tom and Jerry party or a Kentucky Derby party or something like that. Again, it's just kind of picking right back up where you left off, because you always had that common ground of experience. And once that happens, once that's established, it's a nice bond.
Well, that's what I keep hearing. Unfortunately, I was supposed to go to my first convention this year.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody knows under the COVID year, that didn't happen, right? So I was not able to go to my state convention. I wasn't able to go to the national convention, which I was thinking about. I believe it was Baltimore. I think it was Baltimore this year. Yeah, we were supposed to go, but that didn't happen or whatever. So I'm hoping to. Everybody keeps talking about the conventions and how it's a great place to go, but I'm hoping to see that in the next couple of years. Hopefully, whenever we reopen again.
Yeah, hang in there, Stephen. It will be worth it. That was another one of those experiences when I was an officer going to my first convention. That again just opened up. That was another eye-opening experience for the positive, and it really bums me out when I think about what people like you are missing out on. People that lodge exalted rulers, state presidents, that that's all part of the experience of being able to go to these things. And with COVID, they haven't been able to, and it breaks my heart.
Yeah, well, let's go up on a higher note now.
Okay.
No reason to drag it into the doldrums of the.
I know. Well, sorry, Stephen.
No, it's fine. I brought it up.
Reason, I wouldn't feel that way if it wasn't such a good experience, and you'll get there, and it just hang in there.
No, that's fine. I'm not going anywhere, so that's a good thing. So I guess the next question that comes up is that as a DDGER, I would assume that once you go to your district meetings and your state meetings, you have to give public speeches. And I know we just talked about this back with the ritual thing. Have you found that your public speaking is better now that you've been able to go through the chairs and kind of you're required and forced to speak in front of a crowd? I do know that is a big problem with a lot of folks. They just get a little stage fright.
Yeah. Yes. I have improved my public speaking. I suppose it might be depending on who you ask, but I like to think I have. I'm at the point now where what I need to do now is just write down some talking points, and I can kind of fill in the gaps and the transitions off of that. But Yeah, when you're an officer and you have to do the ritual, you have to give reports and all of that. I I I don't see how you can't improve as a public speaker. And I've always thought a good thing a lodge should do is seek out, say, a Toastmasters group and offer a room. And
Oh
hey,
wow,
we'll
that is a good idea.
yeah, again,
Yeah.
you use the room, and then hey, we got some people that would be interested in participating in that. Yeah.
No, that's a great idea. One of the things that I've tried to do in my lodge, although only being a loyal knight, but is if you haven't realized yet, I have no problem with speaking publicly to anybody.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as Ben says, sometimes you can't shut me up. But I look at it like this, which is that how did you, being a younger officer, maybe in the position where I am now, or even as coming up in the ER, how did you motivate people in your year? I mean, how did you look at, because let's face it, we're all volunteers, right? We're all volunteers. We're all volunteering, whether you're cooking in the kitchen or being a committee chairman or running in the chairs or whatever. We're all volunteers. What was your kind of your style, or how did you motivate people when kind of the rubber met the road and you had something that needed to be done?
Well, I found that if you were prepared, you could give a lot of pep talks on all of that, and that works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. But I found that the most consistent thing is just not to waste their time. So you want to be prepared and organized and supportive, and then generally you didn't have to really motivate them because they just knew they were going into a good situation. If they were going to cook, for instance, or if I recruited a new volunteer, make sure they have something to do and not just show up and just stand around, waiting for someone to tell them what to do. It's kind of it's about preparation and being organized to me, and then if someone felt like quitting, usually I found that if I could empathize with them, I did, and then they didn't feel so isolated, or that, they're the only ones that this kind of thing happens to.
Right. No, I've seen that happen a lot.
Yeah.
And then of course that throws into, did you reward folks?
Yeah. When I was ER, we had an ER budget. And so those people would, get the drink chip. I also acknowledged them in the lodge bulletin and at the lodge meeting. And at every time we had an event, the ER should really, if they're able to, if they're not working or have a family commitment, they should be there, and they should be thanking the members for attending, and then they should be really especially thanking the volunteers, and acknowledgement, and not give them the impression that they're being taken for granted. At least make sure they're not having a bad time, and
Gotcha.
Yeah. So.
No, understandable. Well, wow, you've been a wealth of information.
Oh, well, thank you.
At
Over
point,
the capital of China is now.
So my final question to you this evening is, if you know now, but what is the old adage they always say? If I knew now when I was back then, so much, I would have done things differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
You now, as what'd you say, 22 years about 22 years into the Elks. What would a young member that's thinking about joining the chairs, what would be your pitch? I mean, how would you say, hey, you know what, young member or young person, this is why you should do it. Give me kind of an overall of what you would tell somebody who's kind of maybe on the fence and might be interested in coming up.
Well, for committee people, I always say, bring your, when I would interview new members, on indoctrination, I was like, bring your interest to the lodge. If you don't if you're not interested in what we're currently doing, bring your own interest. If you're a theater person, hey, maybe we can do a dinner theater, for whatever troop you're in. Maybe, okay, you're into target shooting. And I did this. We have an event at our state convention. Have a trophy shoot, handgun trophy shoot. Bring your own interest into the lodge, because if they care about it, they'll probably do a good job with it. And then as far as being officers, just make sure that they have time for it. And because you don't want to set them up to fail, and sugarcoat everything and say, oh yeah, all you got to do is show up on lodge night. Well, that's a lot of it, but you should come to some of the lodge events too. And if they can't do that, it might not be the right time for them to be an officer. I might have volunteered there all day Saturday, cleaning out the basement, and I'd go upstairs to the main floor to get dinner, and I had jeans on, and the very members that I was trying to help were giving me the stink eye because I was wearing jeans.
Right.
Yeah. And so, it's and I had a lot of support from PERs, and most of them, and some of the people on the House committee and all that. So I mean, I didn't do it all by myself, but you can be the catalyst, and
right.
You can turn this. You can make a difference, and it can change your life. And worst thing that'll happen is you'll make some friends. So
absolutely.